You're watching Act TV. I'm Julianna Forlano. Our next guest is a leading voice from the climate movement, and as of this month, a member of Joe Biden's task force on climate. Varshini Prakash of the Sunrise Movement is with us today to talk about how she plans to push forward with the fight for bold, far-reaching climate policies to secure our future on this planet. Thank you very much. That's very important work. Prakash is the executive director and co-founder of Sunrise, a movement of young people working to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process through the Green New Deal. Varshini has been a leading voice for young Americans, including when she helped lead a mass demonstration for the Green New Deal with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that went viral and put the climate crisis at the top of the political agenda for the 2020 elections. Thank you in advance for doing that. In 2019, she was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list for law and policy and Time's 100 Next, a new list of rising stars who are shaping politics, popular culture, science, and more. Varshini, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Talk about the climate task force you were asked to join. How will the task force influence Biden's policy platform?
Yeah, so the task force was really a concession that Bernie Sanders received when he suspended his race earlier this year. There will be 6 different task forces on a number of different issues, from climate to education to criminal justice reform, et cetera. And each task force has 8 people, 3 from the Bernie side, or Bernie nominated folks, and then 5 from Biden's side.
So who's on Biden's side? Is it like this guy from the coal company, or
no? Actually, it's kind of awesome. There's some good people on the Biden side for the climate task force. So on the Bernie side, it's myself, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, and this amazing environmental justice advocate, Catherine Flowers from Alabama. On the Biden side, it's Gina McCarthy, who is the EPA administrator under Obama. It's chaired by John Kerry. I think people know who John Kerry is. And then a couple of representatives, so Representative Kathy Castor from Florida, who chairs the Select Committee on Climate Change, and Representative Don McEachin, who's from Virginia and is a big environmental justice advocate, as well as Carrie Dugan, who is a senior sort of advisor to the Biden administration, or the Obama-Biden administration. So it is, I was cautiously optimistic when we started these meetings, because a lot of these folks are actually, I feel like, understand the crisis that we are in and are, consider themselves to be climate champions. But I really see this task force as the way that we can bring the sweeping ideas that are in the Bernie Sanders campaign, like a green elite, the Joe Biden administration. But also this is going to help inform the Democratic National Committee's platform. So the Democratic Party's platform going into the 2020 election, and is a real opportunity for us to deliver on the kind of platform and agenda that is going to excite key voters that Joe Biden needs if he wants to win the election this November. I'm talking young voters, I'm talking Latinx voters that Bernie Sanders just up and away was able to swing in his favor, and that Joe Biden really needs if we're going to win and defeat Donald Trump.
What do you think that your appointment, as well as the appointment of these other really active folks, means about the center and right parts of the Democratic Party that Biden represents? Do you think the voters in that voting bloc who don't see climate as the emergency that it is will come along with a platform put together, say, by you and AOC, which would be great?
Well, look, I mean, I think what we're seeing is, and part of what I think AOC and myself being on this task force is that a lot of the ideas that we believe in, a lot of the power that we have built is really coming to manifest. Just as you mentioned in your opening, 18 months ago, Sunrise was a relatively unknown organization in the United States of America. And Representative Ocasio-Cortez was rep-elect at that time. She hadn't even been sworn in, and we were sitting in together at Nancy Pelosi's office. This moment that kind of created a crack and an opening for us to actually debate and put solutions on the table that were at the scale and scope of the crisis, and that made the climate crisis matter to everyday people through understanding the job opportunities, understanding the economic opportunities, understanding how we can improve health and create clean air and clean water through addressing the climate crisis. And so a lot of these ideas became more common sense through a Green New Deal in this moment. And you fast forward just a year and a half later, and we are now on this task force debating and trying to design the policy platform for the next potential president of the United States of America. So I think it shows that organizing wins. There is no doubt in my mind that we wouldn't be on this task force if we hadn't been putting inside pressure, outside pressure, building both popular movements, but also electing officials to office who are from our communities, who carry our values, and who are able to work on this inside outside strategy that is actually making a lot of these ideas now popular and dominant in American politics.
Sunrise had been loudly critical of Biden. Will Sunrise continue to be critical of Biden with your appointment? We wouldn't want, shrewd politicians to on a policy plan and then shut up the rest of the movement. Your thoughts about that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've been asked this question a lot. I get it. I'll be totally honest. Like, Joe Biden wasn't my first favorite candidate. He wasn't my second, maybe not my third or fourth either.
I think everyone feels that way. Who was like, yay, Biden? Nobody.
Yeah, and it's,
he doesn't excite, let's say.
Totally. And I totally resonate with that. At the same time, we endorsed Bernie Sanders earlier this year. I went across the country campaigning for him, rallying people, getting young people out to vote and knock doors and call their fellow voters. And at the same time, we knew this was never going to be about a single politician. This was never going to be about a single moment in time. Our greatest mission was how, we have to enact a Green New Deal in this country if we want to preserve humanity and human life on this planet for generations to come. That is how dire this situation is. So our ultimate mission is, how do we stop the climate crisis, end the level of economic and racial inequity that exists in this country, and do it on an extremely fast timeline. And that is the priority for us. And so we knew whether it was going to be a President Sanders, whether it was President Booker or Buttigieg or Harris or Biden or even President Trump, we had to build a grassroots army of people, really, of millions of people, both inside, outside the halls of Congress, and also elect a new generation of politicians to office, both before this election and after it, if we actually want to enact policy. So to me, this is not about selling out or, whatever. This is about taking every opportunity we have to push the agenda forward. We lost, and that was brutal. And I spent a lot of days feeling sad about it. And at the same time, that doesn't mean we get to just walk out or be righteous and walk away. We have to continue engaging because there are too many lives on the line. There is too much at stake for our collective future.
And don't you think it's great training to be just in the room?
Totally. I think so. And I think, for me, part of why, part of why I believe that I'm not going to lose my head in here, and why I believe people like
we're going to keep you not losing it.
Exactly. Like, I feel accountable to my people. When I walk in that room, I feel like I have thousands and thousands of young people just at my side and at my back, keeping me honest and keeping me with my eyes on the prize of what we are up against. I think we have to ensure, there is a reason why I'm in that room, and it's because I have spent the last few years talking to people in Paradise, California, whose entire town was just razed to the ground because of wildfires. I have been, communicating with people in Detroit who live in the most polluted zip code in the nation, in the state, a zip code that is 80% Black, and are experiencing the ravages of the fossil fuel industry. I've, talked with communities and farmers in Iowa who are seeing big ag pollute their farms and seeing climate change just drown their crops year in and year out. And I talk to 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds who are just so fed up with the level of inaction by our politicians, and who are so ready to take action, and realizing that at this time in history, it is incumbent upon younger generations to step up and take the lead where generations before have failed us. And so when you are filled with those stories, when you have that moral grounding, there is no way that you can go in those meetings and be led astray. Because I think ultimately this isn't about politicking or, currying favors. This is about, like, what is the moral mission at hand? What is the obligation that we have to ourselves and to future generations, to communities in the global South that are already being subsumed by sea level rises and wild storms. It's about that, and it's about bringing your heart into the game, as well as, the policy discussions and whatever.
We're speaking with Varshini Prakash, the executive director and co-founder of Sunrise, a movement of young people working to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process through the Green New Deal. Additional questions, obviously, for you. How do we know? So you're on the task force with Biden. This is good. You're putting together the platform. Also good. What should we be looking for? And what should we be looking for in terms of, will Biden actually follow through on this platform? Not just like he agrees to it, but, and what are the kinds of things you're putting, first, what are the kinds of things you're putting on the platform or working to, hoping to, and how will we know if Biden isn't just going to say, I'll do it, get our votes, and then blow us off?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one that I think about every day. Look, like I think one of the things that makes me cautiously optimistic and hopeful about this task force is that I really believe that we have raised the bar on the level of conversation about the climate crisis. Just 4, maybe 6 years ago, the dominant conversation about climate policy was, how do we enact some, silver bullet carbon market mechanism that is going to punitively tax people, and reduce our carbon footprint in the meanwhile. And the level of conversation has moved from that to being, how do we actually discuss how we are going to invest trillions of dollars into the American economy to support American families, to enact a massive jobs and infrastructure plan that can actually put tens of millions of people to work, that can have tangible, immediate benefits for people's lives, that can enshrine our right to clean air and clean water into law, that can actually ensure that fossil fuel corporations are held accountable for their actions, and that a transition out of this economy does not hurt workers, but that workers are actually foregrounded in this plan, and we have all of the social safety nets that they need to ensure that this transition does not displace them. And so that is the level of conversation that we are having, and that is just night and day from where we were before. So some things I would look out for. Are we talking about solutions on the time frame of the next 5 to 10 years or the next 50? To me, it has to be about the next 5 to 10 years, about moving a national mobilization economically in the next decade to transition away from fossil fuels.
I mean, it's a great time to do it. We've got this.
Exactly.
They're making hay with the pandemic. We
right.
need to be making hay.
There are 30 million people out of work. We all know that the economy that we had before coronavirus hit was broken. It is not worth returning to. So why don't we use this moment to actually move away from a fossil fuel economy, use this moment to employ many of those 30 million people in jobs that were better, that have better benefits, that have access to a union, that do the important work of moving us away from, that do the important work of tackling the climate crisis as well. We have a huge opportunity, even though it does not feel like it many days when we are stuck in our houses and family and friends have contracted this scary virus, and we're feeling really despairing about when it's going to end. But I really believe that there is a lot of hope and opportunity. So, I think that's one of the things to look out for. I think we've got to make sure is justice for Black communities, for tribal nations, for Latinx and immigrant communities. Is that foregrounded in this plan, or is it not? And is the vice president talking about that? That is critical. The other thing I'd say is there a plan for workers transitioning from a fossil fuel economy that is specific, that is supported by unions, that has workers at the table? So those are some of the things that I think people should really look out for. And for me, it's also, is the VP communicating about the climate crisis in a way that is passionate, that is authentic, that brings in personal stories, that conveys the urgency of this moment? I think part of the problem is people tell me, I know that the VP personally cares about this issue. And I'm like, that's all good and well, but there's some break where young people and people generally are not actually seeing that and have not understood him to be a climate champion on this issue quite yet. So I'd like to see him communicating a lot more clearly and authentically and frequently about the opportunity in the climate crisis and how that combines with issues of immigration, of jobs, of health, the economy, et cetera. How we hold him accountable. Sorry, just one more thing on how we hold him accountable. Look, there is no guarantee that we can hold him accountable. Okay, there's no guarantee that just because I'm on this task force, or just because AOC is on this task force, or just because Bernie and Joe Biden get along, that our values and vision are going to be enacted in a Biden administration. We have to fight for that. And we have to build so much power that they have no choice but to act. So to me, if you want to hold somebody like that accountable, and you want to make sure that both outside the halls of Congress and within, there is pressure to make sure that he is accountable to the vision that we all believe in, join a movement, join an organization like Sunrise, make sure that your voice is heard, and make sure that there is a surround sound coming from the grassroots, coming from academics, coming from policy wonks, coming from other politicians, coming from the full field of partners that we have and allies, and the full gambit of issues that we have, that this is a priority, and that we have gotten so powerful that they have no choice but to act.
In the 19 people.
Say that again.
You take old people and some.
Yes.
What's the age cutoff?
Yeah. We take the young and the young at heart. So
is it like a playground where if older people go without a kid, you kind of feel like a pervert? Or
that's hilarious. No. I mean, look, we do all kinds of things. We phone bank for dope down ballot candidates who are carrying on the vision that people like Bernie Sanders had on the campaign trail into the halls of Congress. People like Charles Booker in Kentucky, people like Jamal Bowman in New York. These folks have down ballot races coming up in the next month. We need people out there making calls, talking to voters, not outside, but within your house.
Outside.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go to sunrisemovement.org, you can sign up for some of these phone banks, and it doesn't matter how old you are. We are so happy to have you. So there's a lot of opportunities for that.
Varshini, just your comments on a couple of other things. I didn't see, it seemed like when Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump, she didn't necessarily embrace the climate change moment. Yeah. And she has had a long history, much like Joe Biden. They both have long histories, in government, but she didn't really pay. I think, one of the big criticisms of her and her campaign was that she basically was like, oh, the Bernie people, see ya. Yeah. Whereas Joe Biden cannot ignore the Bernie people anymore, and he is not ignoring the Bernie people. Yeah. Your thoughts about my what that might mean?
I mean, I think it means we're winning.
The fact that they're not ignoring us anymore is kind of nice.
Yeah.
They learned their lesson the first time, I think.
Totally. And I think it's like, this is, to me, people always say, oh, well, Bernie lost, he failed. This shows that progressives can't win in the United States of America. That is just BS, and it's not true. And I believe, yes, Bernie Sanders did not win this time around. I think we've got to take a good hard look at why that happened.
But he did win because you're on the thing.
Exactly. But there is so much that has happened as a result. We have whole new generation of politicians that are running for office. Just look at what one AOC has done for politics in America. Can you imagine her having 20 colleagues like that in Congress out of all of those, X hundred people? Just even having 20 colleagues like that, what would that do to politics in America and shifting the entire playing field that we are operating from? So look, we cannot afford to sort of lick our wounds forever. Like, we have to understand the ways in which progress is sincerely being made. We have literally, it's May 2020. We launched Sunrise 3 years ago with a vision of making climate action a priority in this nation, of ending this dispute between climate and economy, jobs and environment, but actually seeing them as part and parcel of the same thing, of ensuring that a justice-based narrative is primarily the focus that we are using to enact climate policy. And we didn't do it on our own by any means, but look at what has happened in this nation because young people are standing up, because we are linking arms with environmental justice allies, because we are actually contesting for political power, not just standing on the sidelines. Like, I will never believe that we are not powerful, because look at what we have achieved just in the last 4 years alone. And it makes me really excited and hopeful for what we can achieve in the next 4.
We're speaking with Varshini Prakash, co-founder and executive director of the Sunrise Movement, pivoting just a moment to a story we covered early in our show. And I know we didn't say that we were going to talk about this, but you can comment if you can.
Yeah.
So a federal judge delivered a win in Montana to landowners, farmers, conservation groups who are fighting to protect the groundwater, the climate. The judge said that the BLM failed to consider risk to Montana's environment and water supply before issuing those 287 oil and gas leases that were covering thousands of acres of land. The decision's going to protect Montana's livelihoods, clean water, the land, the animals, the whole thing. Do you see, and this comes hot on the heels of the pipeline, being said that it's unsafe. Do you see this? I'm hoping that it's a pattern, that federal judges start to feel emboldened to actually protect the environment. What are your thoughts about that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that these things really feed off of each other. I think there is, while we want to believe that judges are sort of the neutral arbiters of our law, I think there is a real case to be made that movement activity, that people organizing and contesting, both at the grassroots level, but also through legal routes. You're seeing now young people who are suing the government for inaction on climate, both at the national and also international level. I think it just goes to show that there are a variety of routes that we can actually go to stop pipelines, to really bolster the transition away from fossil fuels and towards a renewable energy economy that exists both in the law, but also in building popular power, that exists in electing people to office, and through creating really progressive policy. There's the whole gambit, and we've got to shift the whole field. We've got to shift the terrain towards that objective.
I saw last night on a rerun of Stephen Colbert that Andrew Cuomo was Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York was on, and he was talking about quarantining at home with his 3 daughters who are in their early 20s. And I thought, gee, daughters in their early 20s at home with the governor. I hope they're political. You can't be the governor's kid without having some idea of what's happening in politics.
Yeah, probably.
And then, just last week, a pipeline here in New York was Cuomo vetoed a pipeline here in New York. So,
wow. There's a lot of studies that show that the most effective way to get at to change older folks' opinions is through their children, and particularly daughters are really effective on their fathers. So for anybody watching out there, don't give up hope on your dads or your families. Don't spend too much time with your uncle, but I think there's
Get out of there. If it's
Yeah,
not
I know.
gonna work,
If it's not gonna work, get out of
somewhere else.
there. But if, I have seen just like unbelievable transformations happen with
I think it is very hard, especially with even with a Joe Biden, for people
Yep,
to get from, oh yeah, we got to clean up the environment, to, oh my God, my kids are going to die. Like
totally.
there, and that change, hopefully we can impress upon old man Joe, no offense, to just really see that it's not the environment of his boyhood anymore, or
Right,
even his middle-agedhood, or even his upper middle age.
right,
Anyway,
right,
just making
right.
old man joke. um you're walking this interesting line between trying to influence Biden's policy from the inside and putting pressure on his campaign from the outside. uh is it difficult for you?
Um, I mean, I think it's just, everything is feels difficult right now, if I'm being honest. I mean, we were supposed to strike with 2 million people on Earth Day. We were supposed to, be well on our way to putting out hordes and armies of people to get candidates elected all across America and pivoting into the election. So, yeah, it's been hard to figure out how to run a social movement. At a time when it is not possible to gather. And so I think one of the things that we've been really trying to figure out is how do we use this moment to really set the stage for the level of recovery and action that we're going to have to take um, as we move through this crisis and support this economy in tailspin, and so many people who are suffering from the health impacts of the coronavirus crisis and the economic fallout. So that's been, it's been really hard. I think the piece about I think the thing that grounds me in the middle of all of this is just remembering why I do what I do. Just earlier last week there was a horrific hurricane cyclone that hit the eastern side of India, and that's where my not exactly where my family's from, but just seeing these disasters strike again and again and again, it reminds you, these conversations might be uncomfortable. You might have to agitate in places that feel kind of scary. I've had to sort of step in and move through a lot of my own imposter syndrome and feelings of wow, I'm the youngest person on this task force by a lot. I'm a young brown woman who's 5 feet tall, who's engaging with a very different demographic of people most of the time. And it's really forced me in a good way to grow and step into a level of leadership that I never even imagined for myself. So I think it's possible, and I think the biggest thing to do is sort of emotionally and spiritually and in any way possible keep our eyes on the prize and hold on to what is the most important in all of this and not get caught up.
Varshini Prakash, Executive Director and co-founder of Sunrise, the movement of young people who allow old people in to stop stop climate change and create those millions of good jobs in the process through that Green New Deal. We're very excited that you came on the program. We hope that you will come back. We've been following and supporting and live streaming Sunrise movement events, particularly me. I've come to as many as I can.
Oh, that's awesome.
On the ground New York City live streamer for this organization. So grateful to have you on the program. Looking forward to what you'll be able to accomplish with the Joe Biden administration, with the hopefully upcoming Joe Biden administration. And then if we don't get a Joe Biden administration, looking forward to see what you'll do, what we'll do in that case, because the fight is not going to end just getting
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Thank you so much for having me. For anybody that's watching, go to sunrisemovement.org. Join us if you haven't already. We need you, even in the midst of a pandemic. Actually, we need you, especially because we're in the midst of a pandemic. And stay safe out there.
Thank you so much. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, please. We are a fairly new YouTube channel, and we are bringing you the voices of progressive activism and progressive thinking and progressivism every single week between 8, 10, sometimes 12 interviews every week. That's a lot. These folks need an outlet, and we are it for them. So thanks for watching.